Well, hello everyone. It's me, Shannon Joy, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Live from the Christmas bunker at my home, in my dining room, with Mike Panessa joining me today. Mike is the owner of Blue Mongoose Web Development, and he's the guy who created my app. He's the guy who created my website, and he has saved me in these past few weeks as we've moved the program temporarily from our former flagship radio station to my dining room, hopefully to a new flagship radio station very, very soon. And so I'll give you all some updates on that as well. Mike Panessa, how are we looking there? Are we up and running?
I believe so, yeah. Everything looks good.
Everything looks good? If you guys have any questions or concerns, I'm so sorry about last week on Thursday. We got knocked off of the YouTube stream. I think it's because I had too many things running on my computer. And so we've addressed that today, and I think we're going to be all set. I have a great program for you today. We are going to talk about the show. There are some really exciting developments that I can't give you all the details on right now, but we are moving very quickly here at the Shannon Joy Show to not only find a new flagship radio station here locally in the Rochester, New York market, but also work with some of my friends and colleagues, hopefully nationally, to begin to push out the radio program, but also the live video stream. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's crazy, guys. This is week 3. Week 3. Since the day that my successful radio program, The Shannon Joy Show, was terminated unceremoniously and to my immense surprise by the person that I used to broadcast with. So it's just crazy to think that in the span of, as we move into week number 3, that it's been, 14, 15 days since that all happened. It feels like it was yesterday. And we really have been scrambling to get everything up and working. So for those of you who are just finding me, my name is Shannon Joy. I'm the host of the Shannon Joy radio program. Right now we're in transition. We are broadcasting live via YouTube from my home in the Christmas bunker, and we're going to be doing that until we can find a new studio, but that is happening very quickly. You can find me at theshannonjoy.com. This broadcast usually will populate the on-demand segment, the subscriber on-demand segment, about an hour after we do the live program. So anyone can listen live on demand at your leisure from theshannonjoy.com. Also, I post all of my Twitter feed, Facebook feed, anything that I'm posting out is housed right at theshannonjoy.com, and you can also access Shannon Show Prep, and this is the archive of all of the resources that I use. So everything we talk about today on the program and in previous programs, all of those links and resources are pulled up. You can access them at theshannonjoy.com. It's interesting, I got a very angry Twitter reply last week on the program on was it the Wednesday or the Thursday program? Oh, it was the Thursday Facebook Live. So we got knocked off of YouTube. Yeah. But we didn't skip a beat. We were up within 5 minutes on Facebook Live, and everybody moved over to Facebook Live, and we were able to make it happen. But that program was really interesting. I want to encourage you guys to go to my Facebook page and pull that up. It's about an hour long, and we detailed the connections between Jeffrey Epstein. He is the sex predator out of Florida that was arrested for molesting hundreds of young girls from his Palm Beach residence, also his private island. This is where the word Lolita Express came from. And he was very, very well connected to heads of state, global power figures, not only in the United States, but in foreign countries. He was heavily connected to Bill Clinton, but also Donald Trump. And so in Friday's program, we laid out the connections between Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, and Bill Clinton. And this is something that, is evidence of the unibrow. But the reason he's in the news right now is that Donald Trump has promoted the federal prosecutor out of Florida, Alexander Acosta, to one of the highest positions in the country. He's the head now of the Department of Labor. And we tied that to even more recent news, the the desire of Betsy DeVos and a lot of big movers and shakers in Washington, D.C. to combine the Department of Labor with the Department of Education. And this will create the 21st century workforce, right? Because federal bureaucrats don't look at your children as unique and individual human beings that need to learn. They look at them as human capital. And these are entities to be indoctrinated and trained to work in the 21st century economy. And so this is why they want to merge the Department of Education, Department of Labor. It's something that I have criticized roundly for many years now. I've prepared you all for that merger. But this interesting connection now, Alexandra Acosta, who detailed in multiple articles, the one that I used was the one from the American Conservative, the outrageous and absolutely unprecedented deal that was struck, essentially setting Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted child molester, a sexual predator, basically giving him a sweetheart deal. This deal was cut a few years ago and detailed by a blockbuster report in the Miami Herald. So essentially, you have Alexandra Acosta cutting this unbelievable deal because of pressure from Jeffrey Epstein's his legal team. And his legal team, this is interesting as well, featured not only Alan Dershowitz, a famous legal mind for the left, but also Ken Starr, the famous legal mind for the right. So here you have this superstar legal team connected to every major power figure, both on the right and the left, connected to Bill Clinton, but also Donald Trump now, cutting a sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein a few years ago. And what ends up happening? Donald Trump ends up promoting him to Department of Labor, which is going to merge with the Department of Education, meaning the guy who couldn't manage to protect children in Florida and cut a sweetheart deal with one of the premier predators in the U.S. is now in charge of your children. And so that was the nature of the Facebook Live. I had a listener who, she sent me an angry Twitter, and she said, Shannon, we're talking about Shannon Show Prep. This is where I back up everything I say with facts and original resources. It's on theshannonjoy.com. She got very angry at me on Twitter, and she said, Shannon, I was looking at Shannon Show Prep about the show that you just did on Jeffrey Epstein, and you linked me to an ACLU website. And this is just so terrible. I would never donate to the ACLU, and it's a terrible organization, and why on earth would you associate with the ACLU? And I had to explain to her, I like to feature original sources if I can on my Facebook page. And in the context of that post, it was essentially the ACLU, it was a press release where the ACLU received, I believe, a $50 million grant from George Soros to promote criminal justice reform. And so rather than, posting a story about that, I like to show the actual press release. It was from 2005. So no, I do not support the ACLU. I've criticized the ACLU. The only reason that they're linked under Shannon Show Prep is because I want to bring you guys, like I said, original sources. So anytime I can click on the link, then click another to get back to the very original source, I try to do that. And so that is one of the features on theshannonjoy.com. It's that robust show prep, and you guys have access to every bit of it. So Mike, how are we doing on the feed? Do we have people popping on? Are they sharing it out?
Yeah, we've got 26 people on right now.
Sweet.
It's being shared out. We've got people in live chat.
All right, so we have live chatters. We have folks sharing. If you guys are watching right now, please click on the link, copy it, and post it on your Twitter account, your Facebook account, and try to push it out. We are still waiting for for YouTube to allow us to embed this video in my Facebook stream and also my Twitter stream via Periscope. And they're dragging their feet. We have to wait for them. It's essentially whenever they decide to allow us to embed, we'll be able to do that. once that happens, we're going to be able to push this out live every day, and I think we're going to see the views and the comments and the popularity of the stream grow by leaps and bounds. But we just have to wait. We're at the mercy of YouTube. We have to wait. Do we have any comments or questions? How does the sound look? How does the lighting look? What? You're laughing.
The sound, everything looks good.
Okay.
The show makes my blood pressure rise. I love it.
So who is that?
That's the Zippy Crew.
Oh, Zippy Crew says, the show makes my blood pressure rise. I love it. Well, Zippy, you have a strong countenance there, buddy. I appreciate that. That is my goal. My goal is to shock and horrify you all on a daily basis and try to keep it fun and entertaining. And so we have a lot of great shows that we did last week. If you guys want to pop onto theshannonjoy.com, you can pull them up, subscribe, and you can get access to all of that. Again, on Thursday, we got kicked off, and on Friday, we did not do the live show from the bunker because I was actually doing a live show on The Blaze. I was joining Steve on the Steve Days panel on the Steve Days program on The Blaze, along with Aaron and Todd, his producer, and we had a raucous Days panel. In addition, stay tuned this week. It might be today, I think, or tomorrow, but on Saturday I did a marathon session with the fellas over at the Steve Days Show. They did their year in review, a special 2-hour Days panel. So on Saturday morning, I spent 2 hours. It was exhausting. Let me tell you. I mean, we talked. I have this was my show prep. So Steve Days does not allow me to come on his show without sending. He always sends us, a Word document of what the topics are and what we're going to discuss. And so I have to do my homework. And in this case, we basically did a year in review. So everything and anything that happened. And so these were my notes. But we went through, year-end awards. So biggest winner, biggest loser, biggest traitor, most boring, destined for political stardom. And we just had a really great conversation. That's going to be on The Blaze this week if you subscribe via the Steve Days Show. And I think they're going to split up the 2 hours on 2 days. But I'll get you guys the links and all the information so you guys can watch that as well. So we're hustling here. We're trying to put out as much content as we can, especially for our subscribers. Once we move to the new flagship, you're going to see the format. Essentially, hopefully, we're going to get back to what we were doing just 2 full weeks ago on the radio station that I used to broadcast, which will never be mentioned here. It's like Voldemort. We don't ever mention that station ever again because it is in the past. We're putting that away. But when we get up and running, fingers crossed on a new flagship, it's going to be really fun. We're going to continue to do the live radio program. So the Shannon Joy Show will come to you live every day via terrestrial radio. I think on 3 stations is what we're looking at here. And it's going to be the same as if we never, ever went off the air in the first place. But the interesting and awesome part for all of my subscribers, what we're going to do, and this is in process right now, but I'm hoping to do the live show, push it out for free on theshannonjoy.com, also on YouTube, also on Facebook, also on Twitter. So what we're doing on the radio will be set up just like this, and you guys will be able to access it video stream from YouTube and all of our outlets. The fun part will come after the show, and so what I'm planning on doing is a daily post show. So every day after the live show, exclusively at theshannonjoy.com, you can come in and we will continue the radio program via theshannonjoy.com, and people will be able to ask questions, and that will be something that is completely exclusive. You'll essentially, for your subscription, you'll get an extra 45 minutes to an hour of additional content, answering questions, anything that we couldn't get to. Those of you who are familiar with my radio program, I talk a mile a minute and we go super, super fast, and I have a stack of show prep about this high, and I usually only get to about that much of it, like a teeny little portion. And so I'm like, blah, 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 super duper fast, and then I always run out of time. Every single show. I'm like, I didn't even get to what I was going to talk about at the beginning of the show. And so it really is, we've been needing that extra content, that second hour for so long. And I think after all of this, I think we're going to be able to pull it off. So I don't want to give you guys any details, but I feel very optimistic. I had a very, very big meeting last week, and the meeting was very positive. And I am beginning to feel very optimistic that we just might have a Christmas miracle. We might be able to get this baby up and running.
Woo-hoo!
And so I want you just to keep in touch with me. Feel free to ask me questions. Keep supporting the show, supporting my advertisers. Right now, we are 100% listener supported. So the only reason that we can keep this going as we work on the transition is your donations, your subscriptions. A lot of you are popping on and you're buying gift subscriptions for your loved ones, anyone who loves good content, robust content, and robust discussion about the news and politics of the day. If you think they'd like this program, I want to encourage you to go and exercise the gift subscription option on theshannonjoy.com. You can also donate. There's a little button up in the corner. If you like what we're doing here and you think that it's something that you'd like to support, I want to encourage everyone to do that. Do you have any comments or questions, Mike Panessa? So far?
Just some compliments.
Oh, I like compliments. He's like, just some compliments. Like, I don't want to hear that. That's basically what I want to hear.
Shannon, you look beautiful as always.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes,
Thanks.
That was Michelle Keller.
So let me tell you something about that. There's a big joke in radio about having a face for radio. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that, but I've been in radio for almost 20 years. 13 of those years I was behind the scenes in broadcast radio, television, and billboards as an account executive, and so I handled advertisers as small as little mom and pop restaurants to as big as McDonald's. They were one of my bigger advertisers when I was in outdoor advertising. And the big joke in radio, and then, obviously 5 years ago, I went from the back of the house to the front of the house and launched my own radio show out of a small radio station in upstate New York. And we've been growing ever since. We went from one radio station to 10 affiliates, 10 stations that we were broadcasting out all over New York State, Western New York. So Northern Pennsylvania, into Canada, and across the nation via my Shannon Joy app, which Mike Panessa helped me develop a couple years ago. And so that helped us grow that national audience as well. But the joke in radio is that you have a face for radio. And that means that even ugly people can be spectacular behind a mic, right? The joke, because for those of us who are always in radio, we're always kind of the redheaded stepchildren of media, right? If you go to the big show, you're on network television or you're selling for network television. And, so radio people sometimes have a complex. But the big joke is, oh, you have a face for radio. Look at you, and that means, again, you can be so it's a big transition for me. I mean, I gotta tell you, I really didn't always totally put myself together for my radio show. So you can really get away with like throwing on a hat and not doing your makeup. And so it's definitely been a transition doing the live video stream every day. I just went on, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Accutane, but I have struggled for years with adult onset acne. And it's been, I've tried everything that you possibly can. Every single pill, every single antibiotic, every single topical. And so it's just been really annoying for the past 5 years. And so finally I threw my hands up in the air. So I'm doing Accutane. I just went on it. And one of the side effects is like dry, flaky, itchy, red everywhere. So I got up this morning and my face was like flaming red. And so I'm like, I'm slapping on the makeup and so it's different because even if you feel poopy and you don't think you look good, I still had to go on. And so it's definitely a transition, but I'm definitely getting used to it. And so if I look honest, by the way, I've only been on the Accutane for a week. So I'm expecting it to get a lot worse. Sorry, guys. So, just bear with me if I look a little crazy a couple days. But, so let's get into the content of the show today. I want to talk about the merger between CRTV and The Blaze. I think that would be a really interesting topic. And so many of you have asked me about that. And you've asked me my thoughts. Obviously, I'm connected to both entities. I've been a contributor on CRTV now for a couple years, primarily through Daniel Horowitz, but mostly through Steve Deace on the Deace panel. I've also filled in for Steve Deace when he was in radio. I did fill in during Christmas for him. And I've also been connected with The Blaze. I've been featured on the Glenn Beck program with Michael Pelka when he guest hosted, primarily on education issues. So I'm an expert in education. I've been studying Common Core and education in the U.S. now for the past 5.5 years. I've done hundreds of hours of research, and so if you see stories on theglenbeck.com or The Blaze that I've done in the past, it's usually in the context of education and battling essentially the federal takeover of every education institution in the country. And so I have found, I haven't watched, I don't know about any of you, but I haven't watched Fox News in probably 4.5 years. I have found their content to be, and it was really around the time of battling Common Core when they absolutely refused to report. I mean, here was a brainchild, piece of legislation that was built by Barack Obama, funded by Bill Gates. I mean, every leftist progressive institution supported it, and you couldn't get any play on most of conservative talk radio. When they did talk about it, they got it completely wrong, and certainly on Fox News. And my irritation with Fox News after that, I'm like, after that, I'm like, what's the point of your broadcast? And so they have struck me as a progressive entity, really doing the bidding of the Rhino Republicans. Yes, there's a lot of rhetoric, and yes, everyone's very fiery, and it seems very right-wing. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, Fox News, time and time again, really did cover. They provided a lot of cover for major Republican rhinos doing really, really yucky progressive liberal things. They covered for George W. Bush when, no one can forget the Patriot Act, Medicare Part D, No Child Left Behind, which was the infrastructure, that the vessel that carried Common Core, right? We couldn't have done Common Core if it weren't for the groundwork that was laid by George W. Bush in terms of No Child Left Behind. And so I've moved away from that entity. For the past 4 years, I typically get most of my news from Twitter. I've built essentially a news ticker for myself, and I follow left-wing outlets, right-wing outlets. I follow foreign press. I follow domestic press. And so I'm constantly getting a steady stream of the same story, but every different perspective. And this is kind of the way that I whittle. This is the way that I've been able to try and find the truth, because essentially most of the major mainstream news outlets are really not about truth. It's more about satisfying their investors or their stock prices or their advertisers, or pushing a particular political agenda. And so I've come to rely upon both The Blaze and CRTV for many, many years. I've been a subscriber to both for many, many years. And I'm curious about what you guys think about this merger between The Blaze and CRTV. And I'm going to give you some information today about that merger that some of you might not know. And we're also going to talk about your thoughts about it. And then I'm going to tell you what I think. Let's just start with the facts. Let's just start with what went down. The Blaze, CRTV to merge to create The Blaze Media. This happened last week. Monday was, I think actually it was Sunday night that the news broke. Someone sent me the story. And so this past week we've been kind of digesting this news about the merger. This is from Ad Week, nonpartisan, right? It's just an advertising magazine. I have sources everywhere. I find information everywhere. But Glenn Beck's media company, The Blaze, is teaming with fellow conservative media brand CRTV to form a new company called Blaze Media. The move will unite conservative media personalities like Beck and CRTV's Mark Levin under one umbrella. According to the press release, Blaze Media will have a monthly multi-platform reach of over 165 million people and will be the largest independent, traditionally conservative multi-platform media company in the United States of America. So this is a big deal. This is not a small merger. This is something that people have suspected for quite some time. We knew that Glenn Beck was looking to do something with The Blaze. We knew that there were talks of partnership between Ben Shapiro and his organization, the Daily Wire, but it turns out it's going to be that merger between CRTV and The Blaze. This is the statement from Glenn Beck. The combination of the exceptional roster of The Blaze TV and CRTV talent means Blaze Media will now be as broad and ideologically diverse as the audiences we serve, Beck said in a press release. A release. Blah, blah, blah. Let me take a sip of my... I think dry mouth, too, is going to be a side effect of the Accutane.
Well, and you don't have commercial breaks like you used to have, where you would probably get something to drink for a second.
That's a good point.
You're talking straight.
So Mike Panessa mentioned I don't have commercial breaks. So when I'm doing the live audio stream, we're just going straight. Usually I have a drink and I can, and quite frankly on the radio, no one can see you if you're drinking. You're just, so I could take a little sip on the DL and nobody would know.
Right.
Because I was on the radio and not doing the live stream. Everything's crazy now. Everything's different.
Now, Christian Chamberlain says he's not watched Fox News in several years. He says he doesn't even know what channel it's on his Crt TV.
Christian Chamberlain says that he hasn't watched Fox News in years and he wouldn't even know what channel it was on his TV. Same with me. I've turned it off completely, and I think I'm a much happier person because of it, to be frank. Are you guys able to hear Mike Panessa? I want to know if I need to repeat what he says, but if you can hear him from in the studio, just let me know, and that I won't annoy everyone, and every time you say something, just repeat it verbatim.
We do have a couple of questions.
Okay, so we have some questions. Let me finish up with Glenn Beck's, statement. And then I'll take some of your questions, and then I'll give you a little bit more information that you might not know about, so that you can understand the context of this merger and what it actually means to conservatism, conservative media, etc. So the statement from Glenn Beck, the combination of the exceptional roster of The Blaze and CRTV means Blaze Media will now be as broad and ideologically diverse as the audience we serve, Beck said in a press release. Conservatives, libertarians, constitutionalists, and more have a home at Blaze Media. Our hosts will have differences, but we will share a common belief in free expression, honest discourse, and a society founded in the principles of the Bill of Rights. I am beyond thrilled about this merger. And that is the statement from Glenn Beck on the merger of CRTV and The Blaze. And I'd like to go to your questions now, because we do have a few of you, Mike Panessa, from the audience. I'm looking for general feedback. So do you like the merger? Do you not like the merger? What are your thoughts? And do you have any questions about it? Because we're going to devote this hour to that topic. It's a very important topic, especially when we are in, the nation is in such a state of what's the word? Dishonesty about in terms of media coverage. It's very difficult. If you turn on talk radio, you have the big talkers yelling at you incessantly every day, defending the progressive president who is actually doing liberal Democrat things. And so you can't get the truth about what's going on there. If you turn on left-wing media, you have CNN and even worse progressive liberals who are lying about virtually everything, every policy fight, every piece of legislation. It's just basically everyone on the left and the right gets it wrong every time. So the idea that you could have an outlet that actually reports the truth, and they do that by empowering independent voices who are not beholden to shareholders, major corporations, banks, major advertisers, or benefactors. I mean, that is something that I think could be quite powerful. But go ahead, Mike, with some of the questions.
Good question from Paul A. Do you think they will be more conservative now or less? And they can hear me.
Okay. They can't hear you.
No, they can.
Oh, they can.
Yes, they can.
So Paul wants to know whether or not they'll be more conservative or less conservative. I think you'd have to start, Paul, with one of the biggest questions for me of the year, and that is, what does it mean to be conservative? And this is one of the reasons, you all might not know this, but this is one of the reasons they went with the branding of, I've been told, this is one of the reasons they went with the branding of The Blaze, and they kept on the Blaze name as opposed to CRTV. And the big problem right now is that, CRTV represents conservative review TV. But there's a big question about, what does it mean to be conservative? Is Trump conservative? I would say, hell no, he's not conservative. In fact, Donald Trump might be the most liberal, progressive president we've had in the past couple decades. He's a liberal progressive from New York City, and he's continuing the policies of President Obama. Everything that Obama has done, every signature policy. And let's run down the list. Let's look at Obamacare, debt deficit spending, transgenders in the military, Common Core, funding of Planned Parenthood, and on and on and on and on. Every major policy initiative that President Obama put in place has been strengthened and emboldened by this Republican, quote unquote, conservative Congress. And so, is the GOP conservative? I'd say no. Is Donald Trump conservative? I would say no. Is Ted Cruz conservative? Right? Let's look at someone that people would consider to be a conservative stalwart. And his last major legislative vote before the election was the minibus spending bill, which funded Obamacare, it funded DACA, it funded Common Core, and it funded Planned Parenthood to the tune of $500 million. And that was voted yay by Senator Ted Cruz. So that's not to indict him. That's one vote, and I criticize that vote. I'll continue to criticize that vote in the same way I'm going to continue to criticize Mike Lee and his pushing of jailbreak and criminal justice deform with the likes of Van Jones and Cory Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand and George Soros and the Koch brothers. Is that conservative? Is jailbreak and essentially releasing up to 4,000 violent felons from federal prisons, is that considered conservative? Is debt and deficit spending, $20+ trillion deficits, or a $20+ trillion debt, is that conservative? Is funding Planned Parenthood conservative? So the question here is, when you ask me, do you think it'll be more or less conservative? I don't know, but I don't know that it matters right now. I think for me, what I'm looking for is truth telling. And you might have a lot of voices and organizations that claim to be conservative, but they have nothing to say about liberty. They have nothing to say about the Constitution. They have nothing to say about what's happening to our Constitution. Heritage Foundation and some of these major right-wing, our right-to-life, pro-life organizations, evangelical organizations, education organizations, all of these entities that call themselves conservative, yet continue to carry water for one of the most progressive, liberal, Democrat presidents that our nation has ever seen. And so I guess I'm not necessarily interested in someone being more conservative at this point as I am in someone who will simply tell the truth about what's happening in Washington, D.C., the legislation that is being promoted and passed, how that's going to affect regular people in their lives, and what you can do about it. That's really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who is focused like a laser on the founding of our country and what it looked like in the U.S. when Alexis de Tocqueville came in and toured the United States of America and wrote Democracy in America. The idea there is that, yes, you have government, you have some government. Our founders and framers weren't anti-government. The point is you have small, local, controllable government that is able to be affected by people in their communities, in their municipalities, in their state, and a very, very small, teeny, itty bitty, little bitty federal government, right? That's the point. The point, we are upside down. right? The triangle is upside down. The federal government, unelected bureaucrats, educrats, people who are not in business of protecting your child or even caring about your child, are making the most minute decisions about what your child learns on a daily basis in publicly funded schools, about the health care that your child will receive at the doctor's office, about the information, the data collected on your child. These are people who are making these decisions for 300 plus million Americans. These are the planners, the entities in DC that think that because of their fancy new software system and the singularity, that somehow they're going to be able to make really great decisions about your kid. Bull crap.
Yeah.
That's bull crap. These decisions should be made at the local level. And the idea that we're too dumb to figure these things out locally, that's just bull crap too. We did it 200 years ago. Right?
And maybe we've become too dumb because everything's been decided federally.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, what do you decide for yourself anymore? I mean, let's see some.
Use a muscle.
Do we have any comments, questions? So to answer your question, will it be more or less conservative? I don't know, because I don't know what conservatism means. I do know that liberty and all of these bills, every bill, whether it's education, immigration, domestic policy, foreign policy, spending, all of these bills have a very similar component, and that component is the data and the surveillance, right? It doesn't matter what the bill is, whether it's criminal justice, even transportation bills, is all about, spending a lot of federal government money. And yes, you can maybe have that government money in the form of a grant for any different sort of initiative. But in exchange for that money, you need to set up these massive computer systems, software systems, and you have to begin to merge your data on individuals in your local community into the state database, which then shares it with the federal database, and then they all share it with each other. And this is best evidence when I talk about the merger of Department of Education and Department of Labor, just so you can get an idea, a picture in your mind of what this massive surveillance state could mean for your child or a child in a decade or even less. It means that these two entities, Department of Labor, Department of Education, merge together, and they begin collecting data, millions upon millions of data points on your child from the day that they're born to the day they enter preschool to the day they enter kindergarten till the day they graduate. But it doesn't stop there. This is your kids. Remember your school file? Remember, and they don't do anything wrong at school or else they're going to put it in your permanent file, right? And no one ever wanted to mess with the substitute teacher or mess up at school because it would go in your permanent file. And the permanent file is this manila envelope and like this big dusty filing cabinet. We pulled it out and oh my gosh, it's on your permanent file. And no one liked the permanent file then. Well, think of the longitudinal data systems as those permanent files on steroids. Also not protected by FERPA, which is the privacy legislation that was gutted during the Obama administration's rollout of Common Core. So your private information is no longer secure in your child's school. And essentially they start collecting that data from the time that you're born until all the way through school. And what they're going to do now, and these are everything from your address, your race, medical history, psychological history, any behavioral issues that happen in school, the occupation of your parents, the religious affiliation of your parents, income levels, dental records, it's everything is in there. They're up to 1,100. You can go onto their website, and the schools alone are up to 1,100 coded data points that are mergeable with other state data systems. So this is why they wanted those longitudinal data systems, because New York has to be able to share with California, and California has to be able to share with Texas, and all of them have to be able to share with the federal government. So every code, so Johnny gets in trouble with Susie and he pokes her in the eye at lunchtime, right? And it gets entered into the system as a specific 3-digit, I think, code. That code in New York is the same in West Virginia, is the same in Texas, is the same in California, is the same at the Federal Department of Education. And this is how they build what I call the online avatar. This is the electronic dossier on every American. And so they pull data from the education system. You are not safe in regards to the longitudinal data system unless your school did not take funding from the 2009 Common Core grant programs. And so I'd probably say 85% of public schools, charter schools, and even some private schools have the longitudinal data systems. My public school did not, and the only reason here in Fairport, New York, we don't have a longitudinal data system is because we refused, amazingly, our school board refused all of the grant money during the Common Core debacle. And so we're one of the few schools in the entire nation that teaches regular math, that doesn't have the data system, but there are only a handful. Every charter school must have this data system in order to obtain their charter. So if your kid is at a charter school and they're calling it a classical curriculum, which it isn't, it's Common Core, but if they're telling you that, even worse than the curriculum and the standards, everyone freaked out about the testing and the standards. Even worse than that is the data and surveillance. And that type of system that I just described that happened during the Common Core era, right? That language is in the criminal justice bills. So this is something that Daniel Horowitz just reached out to me on. I'm on an email line, and sheriffs are now saying, have you seen what we have to do to comply with this First Step Act? If you look at the sample legislation out of Utah, it is a laundry list of data and surveillance and coding. So this type of language, and this goes to the heart of the Fourth Amendment and privacy and the ability for humans, to be free and to have privacy. And so this language that I just laid out, it's in the criminal justice bill, it's in every healthcare bill, Obamacare. That's something we never talked about with Obamacare. But you notice now when you go to see the doctor, what are they doing? They're clacking away on a computer. Do you know what they're doing? They are entering your data into massive systems that can be obtained by government entities. This is why there were elderly veterans who had their guns seized how many years ago? Because of the fixed NICS, or it was actually the NICS database that pulled data from doctors' offices. And so if an elderly person asked for help on this or that in terms of finances, a box got checked, and the federal agent or the local law enforcement agent was at their door a few weeks later and seizing their guns, right? So this is something that no one ever talks about. You'll never see this on Fox News. And so Glenn Beck has been really good on this. And so I'm hoping that in this area, the libertarian-leaning Blaze will influence the conservative-leaning CRTV. And what I'm most optimistic about is that those two entities influencing each other. Lots of voices, independent voices, people who are talking about things that aren't discussed in the mainstream media, beginning to influence each other and educate each other about the real problems that we face. The problems aren't D versus R. It is the attack on our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our liberty. And let me tell you, the education system is where they will eventually try to seize children from the parents. That's where it's going to happen. That's why we need every homeschooler on board. We need every private schooler on board. We need everyone and anyone who loves liberty and the Constitution and also loves their children to join this fight, because Common Core is worse than ever. So you said you had a comment, Mike, that you wanted to read.
Oh, there was a couple of big.
Okay.
There's a lot of mixed feelings.
Okay, let's go.
When it comes to the merger, Jennifer Harris says, I kind of like it, but was very unhappy that they dropped Gavin, and that's controversial. But
yeah.
and there is very little on the radio side. Another person, Zippy Cruz, says, I don't want a bunch of Trump cheerleaders on Blaze, a la Fox News. So yeah, that's a concern.
So we have a lot of wide and varied reactions, and that's why I wanted to discuss this today in the program, because as I was monitoring my social media, Facebook and Twitter, there have been a lot of opinions about, folks who are sympathetic to President Trump, who think that he's, the bee's knees, and on the Trump train are very concerned about Glenn Beck and his very outspoken, a full year really of coverage on his program prior to the 2016 election, as we were moving through that very difficult and painful primary process. Glenn Beck was absolutely critical of President Trump, and a lot of people haven't gotten over that yet. They'll never trust him again. I happened to share Glenn Beck's opinion during that process, and I was very critical of President Trump, his character, his associations, his progressivism, his inability to tell the truth. These are all things that we were quite blatant about. But I think after the election, and quite frankly, Mark Levin was not a huge fan of Donald Trump, and he supported Ted Cruz in the primary. And so I think what you have essentially a lot of these voices who were critical of Donald Trump, who were not really sure about this nationalist populism, who really didn't like his connections to the Clintons and to so many Democrat liberals over the years, who kind of put a plug in it. Once Donald Trump won the election, and I was of this mindset as well, it's over. He's the president. So what do we do from here? I'm not going to sit here, and at least from my perspective, I wasn't going to attack his character or go after some of the dumb stories that the left-wing news media and the never Trump rhino crowd would go after. I decided for my program, and this was when I really just kind of clung to discernible policy outcome. So my mission was to report on what was happening in Washington, D.C. in terms of legislation, memorandums, executive orders, what was actually going on, and really try to call balls and strikes. I know that's something that Steve Deace has tried to do. Glenn Beck really has backed away from any criticism. I mean, that's been one of my criticisms of Glenn Beck and Mark Levin, is that they're too darn easy on Donald Trump, right? And that they cover for him. And here he is, with these disastrous tariff policies, signing terrible budget bills. We're going to move into December. We're probably going to have amnesty. We're going to have criminal justice deform and another big, fat, bloated spending bill that funds Planned Parenthood. And here you have some of the leading conservative voices, and it's like they're crickets. So that's been my criticism. I have not been a fan of Gavin McInnes in the Proud Boys. They just go out and get in fistfights with people, and I have to admit I didn't watch Gavin McInnes on CRTV. Was he on CRTV or The Blaze? He was on CRTV. Yeah, Gavin McInnes was on CRTV, and he is, again, another brand of nationalist, populist. He calls himself a libertarian and a fiscal conservative, which basically means, I don't even know what that necessarily means, but he led this group called the Proud Boys, and literally they have like these initiations where they punch each other in the stomach or something, and then they go out and they get in brawls with Antifa and Black Lives Matters. There was a very high-profile brawl where many people were arrested in Manhattan following a speech given by Gavin McInnes, and he showed up one time on his program with this massive black eye because he got in a fight with someone. And so, I don't know. I suppose it's interesting and maybe kind of funny. Like I said, he's aligned a little bit with some elements on the alt-right, the QAnon crowd that I just am not aligned with in any way, shape, or form. So I just didn't find him to be interesting. I think that the ouster of Gavin McInnes is a very clear signal, though. Gavin McInnes was a MAGA hat wearing, Trump train, in your face, punch them back harder, get in their faces kind of populist nationalist entity. And so the idea that so quickly after the merger he's out, I think shows that there might be some more, I think, courageous criticism of this president, and that's what I'm hoping for. Some people have asked about Michelle Malkin and her exit from Crt TV in the wake of the merger between The Blaze and CRTV, and I think that they're making a much bigger deal about that than needs to be made. The truth is that Michelle Malkin was essentially a spokesperson for CRTV. She's done a little bit of investigating reporting for them, but if you go on to the CRTV and you were to look at the work that she's done, she really hasn't done a whole lot in the past 8 months. She doesn't have a daily show. She doesn't even have a weekly show. It's just these little products here and there that she would put out maybe on a quarterly basis. So there really wasn't a lot of content from Michelle Malkin anyway. I've been told that she wants to devote more time to her family and she's really hasn't been on the scene in quite some time. So, I think that was something that could potentially have already been in the works. Essentially, CRTV used her name recognition and just the gravitas of her personality and all of the work that she's done, the amazing work that she's done over the past couple of years, to really lend to the promotion, legitimacy. And yes, she did do investigative reports. But to my knowledge, there's no feud between Malkin and Glenn Beck. I think it's just one of those things when everything changes, people disperse. And you look like we have some questions, comments, Mike Panessa.
Oh, lively conversation.
Lively. Here. All right. Are you guys debating? Are you guys no brawls? We're not the Proud Boys here. Okay, I'm not Gavin McGinnis. So the rule is no swear words.
No.
I know I don't allow any swear words. I love robust debate, but anytime you go into ad hominem attacks and swear words, then I'll usually give a warning or two, and then if people tell me to go F myself, then that's when we do the block. And believe me, when you get to see you next Tuesday and go F yourself and all that, then that's when I'm like, maybe it's time for us to part ways a little bit. So we have some lively debate.
But polite.
Excellent. So what are people saying, Mike Panessa?
Well, there's people that had no idea Malcolm was leaving or that she had already gone.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. There's other people talking about Gavin. They find him entertaining from a hipster standpoint, kind of like Steven Crowder.
Yep.
And I can see that. Let's see what else. There was people asking about your position on the trade deal and how we would fix that.
The trade deal with China?
Yeah.
I think that and I'll get into this in a more robust show when I'll do a little bit of prep for it, but I have been watching, from my perspective, there's no trade deal. So there is some rhetoric about a potential trade deal. There is an agreement to potentially not impose new tariff axes. That doesn't take away from the fact that they've already imposed an enormous amount of tariff axes that are just beginning to set in, and the ramifications to our economy, both from a consumer perspective, right? Everything you buy now is more expensive. Thank you, Donald Trump, for your tariff axes, which have replaced your tax cuts, all right? So that $35 that you were getting in your paycheck every other week because of the 2017 tax cuts, bye-bye. That's gone. Your washer's going to cost more. Your dryer's going to cost more. Car's going to cost more. Anything and everything that has anything to do with aluminum or steel is going to cost more. If you like soybeans, if you like edamame, and that's one of your favorite, that's probably going to cost more because they basically put soybean farmers out of business. China now has engaged in a multi-million-dollar, multi-year contract with Russia, of all people, for soybean production. So, sorry, you soybean farmers, you're screwed. You're not Tim Cook. You can't go into the Oval Office and get entree to the president so that you can get exempted from whatever his round of tariff axes are, which, by the way, Apple products are exempted from the last round of tariff axes, right? And so Tim Cook has the ability to do that. And this is why I'm such a huge critic of tariff axes. Tariff axes are arbitrary and capricious. If anyone tells you that, we had them during the founding and that was the number one source of revenue for the federal government, well, yeah, we didn't have an income tax either at that time. And the tariffs that were put in place were broad and across the board. Why is that important? Because then it makes it so that your elected leaders can't get favors by protecting certain industries, right? If you can just pick and choose. Oh, by the way, Ivanka's clothing empire is not affected by the tariff axes, by the way. So Ivanka and her budding manufacturing business, by the way, in China and Indonesia, will not be touched by Trump's tariff axes. You see how that works, folks? Because, soybean farmers just don't have access to daddy, but Ivanka does. And so this is why tariff axes are disgusting. They're disgusting. It would be better to have taxes because at least, again, that's broad and across the board. It is not a situation where government officials can essentially take bribes. They can be coerced. They have all kinds of reasons to choose this industry over that industry. And so we haven't seen yet the full extent of the ramifications of those tariff axes, but everyone is singing a sigh of relief. Wall Street is going crazy because they might not issue in another round of 250 billion in new tariff axes, or million, I don't know what the number is. And so my opinion on the trade deal is that there's no trade deal. There is rhetoric about a trade deal, but I haven't seen any of the details. I will tell you that I think that all of this, I have a sneaking suspicion, and remember, pin this for a few months from now. I'm going to make a small prediction. I don't usually like to make predictions, but I've been watching this pretty closely. I think that this tariff axe situation and the whole round of debates between the Chinese and Donald Trump and the heated rhetoric and the bloviating, I think this is going to set us up for a new TPP 2.0. So remember, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was something that Donald Trump essentially pulled us out of. But even the day he pulled us out of that Trans-Pacific Partnership, there have been a lot of there's been a lot of working on the inside to build a new plan, a new Trans-Pacific Partnership, and this will be hailed as the solution to the trade war with China. And everyone who ever criticized TPP in the past will say, oh, but we needed this new global partnership in order to save the American people. See how they set us up like that? They hurt the American people. They meddle in our economy. They meddle in our personal lives. And then when we hurt so bad, they come in with a larger, bigger government entity, this time a global government entity, to save all of us. And this is the crap show that we have for a federal government. Sorry. Is Tippy's blood pressure up yet? So how's Tippy doing? Tippy,
he might have,
we're going to have to hook you up to a heart monitor there, because I don't want you killing over. Do we have any more comments? So that's for the trade. Have I lost all of my listeners?
No.
Have I pissed them off?
They're all still there.
Okay.
I think just one gentleman, Michael Brazow, if that's how we say his name.
Hey, Michael. I know Michael.
So again, we get ripped off by China and Mexico, and we can't do anything about it. So there's some frustration there.
Yeah. Well, they do. So China and Mexico do rip us off, but the answer is not to impose a massive tax on the American people. The answer is to make the United States a place where you can make a lot of money. That means you reduce taxes, you actually substantially reduce taxes, and you absolutely substantially reduce regulations. The reason that we can't compete with China is not that the American people aren't amazing and ingenious and innovative. If they release the American people to go out and build things, create things, and compete, rather than protecting these massive, bloated corporate interests, the steel industry, the aluminum industry, or no, I'm sorry, it's not steel and aluminum, it's
pharmaceuticals.
All of these major entities that exist because of subsidy and contracts, they essentially exist because of the federal government. They suck up an enormous amount of resources. Let the people compete. Let the American people start their businesses, become self-sufficient, start their own farms. But we can't, because we are just buried under all of their rules, and you have to go to school until you're in 12th grade, and then you have to go $100,000 in debt in order to get an education. Then you have to go, it's like we have all these rules that we have to follow, and it makes it so that the average American is basically indebted and really can't innovate. I just went on a rant, like a little bit of a rant there. But.
No, but it makes perfect sense, and I think your audience understands where that comes from innately. So
that's my answer on the trade war, right? So don't ask me questions, because I'll just go on and on and on and on. Here's some information about the Blaze and CRTV merger that I want to bring to you guys before we go to some more of your comments. First and foremost, some people are confused about the merger. They think it's a merger between Glenn Beck and Mark Levin. And so I want to first address that. The Glenn Beck and Mark Levin, and similarly to what we were talking about with Michelle Malkin, they are not the owners of CRTV and The Blaze. They are really just essentially the highest profile contributors on those two entities. And so those businesses use these big name characters who have built up large following, and they use them to really anchor those two news organizations. And so even if Glenn Beck and Mark Levin hated this idea, it would have still happened. The merger between the two companies is essentially a merger between Gaston Mooney, who was the president of CRTV, and Tyler Carden, who is the president of The Blaze. That is where the deal was brokered. And from my perspective, everyone's pretty happy about it. I think there's a little bit of grumbling in both organizations, and everybody is always, they have questions about how it's going to work and what's going to happen. But essentially, this is not the coming together of two high-profile media pundits. Is actually the merging of these two major companies. And in addition, some people are saying that, The Blaze is gobbling up CRTV. And what's going to happen to CRTV? And they're going to be, it's this big monster, The Blaze, kind of gobbling up CRTV. That's not the case either. In fact, I think that that CRTV might have been in a little bit of a better financial position than The Blaze. But The Blaze had this really great branding, and it doesn't mention Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. It's really about the truth, and that's and so I think that they have done such a good job with the marketing of that brand that it just made sense to adopt that brand. So it really isn't The Blaze gobbling up CRTV. If anything, it's at the very least a completely equal merger, potentially something that's even a little bit better for The Blaze than CRTV. Do we have any comments, questions?
Good question. So who owns them?
So I have no idea. I don't know.
That's a good question.
That is a really good question.
Is it?
I know that there are some big money investors. I don't know if they're publicly traded. I'm not sure. But that's a really good question, because you always want to know who owns who. Like right now, you guys all own me because I don't have a show unless you subscribe on my website, unless you donate to keep us going until we find a new flagship. So essentially, and this is my third point. That actually segues perfectly. Who asked that question, by the way? Do you see who it was?
Paul A.
So Paul A asked probably the most important question: who owns it? This is there's a great scene in White Christmas. I don't know if you love that movie, Bing Crosby, and it's just one of these iconic Christmas movies. One of my all-time favorites. I watch it every year. And there's this great scene where Bing Crosby goes in, I forget the name of the actress, and he wants to get her to come and be a star in his show. And so he walks into the nightclub, and she just got finished singing, and she comes down, and she looks fabulous and glamorous and beautiful. And so Bing Crosby starts making a little bit of small talk and telling her, how great it is. And she looks at him, and she goes, "What's your angle?" Right? Like the first thing, what's your angle? Like she cut through the chase. And I think that's what we need. We need to ask what the angles are. And so that's why I like that question from Paul, is that what's your angle? What's driving you? Why are you here? We can move on with the niceties and get to the bottom line. And those are the questions, when you ask about a certain entity, well, who owns it? Who are the main benefactors? Who are the stockholders? Who are the people, not the stockholders, but the shareholders?
Sure.
Who are the people? Because a lot of times you'll be able to see, and that doesn't mean that just because there's an owner and it doesn't mean that they don't put out fantastic products that the audience values and loves. That can all happen together. But if it's owned by George Soros, you might say, hey, that doesn't make any sense, right? And so you got to follow the money. So I'm going to look into that. Thank you for the question, Paul. I don't know who owns them, but I am this, and like I said, this is my last point. One of the reasons I love this merger, I love the merger. So that's my official position. These two entities were vulnerable when they were apart. So CRTV was doing some good things, The Blaze was doing some good things, but essentially they were cannibalizing each other's their audiences because of the similarities. That made them very vulnerable to some of the massive multi-platform news entities out there, specifically Fox Nation and Fox News, if that's where you guys get a lot of your information. The big radio syndicators, a lot of these entities, So it made it difficult for CRTV and The Blaze to operate, not because they weren't excellent businesses with a great vision and great products, but because they're just still really small. And when you're small, you're vulnerable. I know that very well, being the girl who got thrown off the radio station that I used to broadcast from 2 weeks ago. You're vulnerable when you are dependent mainly on subscribers, advertisers, and not some of these big, massive institutions. Then it makes you vulnerable. It makes it more difficult to tell the truth every day. And that's not to say that the truth can't be told every day, and you can't find pockets in certain networks of people who are telling the truth. That can happen. But the thing that I like the most about The Blaze and CRTV is that I think they have the model right. And I've told you guys about the model, that what I think is the correct relationship between a pundit, a journalist, a media personality, and their audience. I think that the audience should come first, then the advertisers second, and then the corporations or the business interests first. Or third. And so what I like about The Blaze and CRTV is that they're both subscription based. The majority of their revenue is coming from these robust subscription bases that they've built up over so many years. That gives them security, guys, and it also makes it so that their finger is on your pulse. As you continue to have the other models, for example, your network TV news, your radio models, they offer a free product, and it's really the advertising revenue that generates all of the income. So who's their number one client? It's not you, it's the advertisers, and also debt. This is another thing. A lot of these major media, I would say, I did a show on this years back, and I think it's still true today. But most major media outlets are primarily owned by big multinational global banks. And so they're either heavily leveraged with debt, or they're completely and wholly owned by these holding companies. It's hard to even figure out who owns what anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And so, if you have a model where you have low debt, the subscribers come first, and then you also pepper in really great advertisers, I think that's the healthiest way to operate a media company. And that's really my mission and goal with my little tiny radio program and now the video podcast, is to get to a position where you guys are essentially my boss. And it's really not a lot for you guys. It's $2.99 a month, so it's something that people can afford, for the price of a cup of coffee. By the way, let's switch it from $2.99. That's so annoying. Let's just do it like $3. Do you want to do that? Let's do $3. Maybe $5. I think once if we get the video component, if we do that full second hour, I might bump it up to $5 a month. If we add the content there. You guys tell me what you think about that. If you'll be mad at me. I won't do it if people are too. You guys won't have anyone who is already subscribed. Yeah. You guys are grandfathered in. Nothing will ever change for you. For all of my angel subscribers, those are folks who give $100. And then you are a subscriber for life. Nothing will ever change for you. But if we decide to push it out in the future with the second hour, then maybe we'll do $5. But none of the $.99 anymore. That's just irritating, right?
That's a 20th century kind of thing, isn't it? It's like a holdover.
It's not even throwback yet. We need to get through another century before it can be throwback. What if I did like $1.27? What if I just did something completely arbitrary? Like,
that's right.
let's just pull out $3.29. Let's do that. So anyway, do we have questions, comments?
We have username a North Georgia Handyman.
All right, North Georgia Handyman. What does he have to say?
Now he says, my Facebook feed has been full of CRT clips for a while, and all I've seen is fear-mongering and Trump-worshipping nonsense.
I know.
So,
I'm hoping that this merger is going to give them the cojones to criticize Trump more, because there's strength in numbers. And I do know that a lot of the people in these entities, they have ideas about who this president is, and you have situations where you got to go. When you have the pressures from the advertisers, major media corporations, and even some of the the listeners, and let me tell you, this is what happens every time a host gets, the only reason I know that you can get through this is because it happened to me. And I don't think it's going to be true moving forward, but it might be. Back in the day, when I would criticize Trump in the early days, okay, you would have, and I think this is because they have Ukrainians working in factories as trolls on social media that pretend to be Trump fans and they pretend to be from the US, and it's like, Susie from Alabama, and I'm like, no, you are a bot in a Ukrainian warehouse. That's what you are. Because I know what you're doing. But essentially what would happen if you ever criticize Trump on social media or even on air, it would instigate the wrath of God. I mean, you would have all of these people calling, tweeting, it's died down a little bit, but they would really make you pay. And I think it really spooked a lot of commentators. I think that defending their position, their principled conservative position in opposition to Trump. I'm not talking about the rhinos and the sour grape never Trumpers that are progressive liberals themselves, right? I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who that would criticize Trump from a policy perspective, from a moral perspective, from that type of thing, from the right. Conservatives who criticize Trump not for being a jerk, but for being a progressive, right? That's what we're looking for. Policy. And I think that people just got so hammered by the MAGA Trump train every time they tried to just talk about some discernible policy outcome, and it just made it so difficult that I think a lot of people got fatigued and were just like, and also all the bigwig suits in radio land and on network television told their radio hosts and all their pundits, listen, the audience doesn't want that. Now that Trump is president, no one wants to hear about why you oppose him. No one. So not going to happen. And this was in a major from the source that I spoke to. This discussion, one example of this discussion happened in a big conference call among Salem executives and radio hosts across the country, and they essentially said, and it wasn't because they liked Trump or didn't like Trump. What they were saying to their host was, listen, you have a market, you have an audience, and we are telling you based on our research that the audience does not want to hear about criticism from Trump. Now, if I were a radio host, and I would say, well, then I'm going to get a new job, because if I can't tell the truth, I'm not going to do this. And that's my perspective now. If I can't tell the truth from my perspective, and that doesn't, I don't need, to be coddled in any way, but if you can't tell the truth, then what's the point of doing it anyway? But I think that there was a lot of politicking going on. I think in some cases, some of the more unsavory characters on the right who are just blatantly MAGA baby. I mean, they treat President Trump like a god. There is this political idolatry that is occurring in some of the media pundits. I think in those cases with people who are less talented, it really is just striking while the iron is hot. And they have access to power. There's a lot of money coming in because they're connected to the Trump administration. One of the women who broadcasted from the radio station I used to broadcast with, who is one of the most irritating Trump MAGA worshipers I've ever had the pleasure to listen to, but she gets to go. She gets to go to the White House. She gets to meet the president. She gets to broadcast from the lawn of the White House. She gets to have her balls. And so I think for some people it's like, hey, let's get while the getting is good, and we have access to power. The money is rolling in. I'm not very talented, but hey, I'll do the propaganda for the president and call it a day. We'll worry about virtue in the country and the Constitution later. And so, that I think is the mindset of some in conservative media who are just raking it in with the Trump train. Any questions, comments?
David L. Says, I find some of Steve Deace's comments about Pound Never Trump lately a bit disturbing, lumping everyone who opposes Trump into one category he calls Pound Never Truth.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
You know, I'm not worried. Steve is talking about a very specific group of Never Trumpers. This is the Bill Kristol Weekly Standard. These are Bush era holdovers, Karl Rove holdovers. They represent kind of the elite establishment of rhino Republicans who just have sour grapes, and so they don't oppose Trump on policy. So they actually, if you substituted Donald Trump with the name Jeb Bush and had the exact legislative agenda this year, they would be cheering from the rooftops, these people. So they don't criticize Trump for the right reasons. They criticize him for the dumb, wrong reasons. And it's his personality, it's his character, which actually I think is a problem too. But for Steve, Steve is much more of a pragmatist. I'm more of an idealist. And so I think from him, he's just looking at it and looking at this particular group. And they are vile, by the way. And they will stab you in the heart in a second if they needed to in order to survive. So these are not savory people, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. But I'm not worried. Let me just put it this way. If Steve were really going after Never Trumpers like myself, I wouldn't be on his program, right? Sure. And I'm technically not a Never Trumper. Like, I would give Trump a million opportunities to redeem himself. But Steve and the folks at CRTV go out of their way to give me a platform. And let me just tell you, from behind the scenes, they have been some of the best friends to me in this entire process. So, here's the deal. Some people love The Blaze, some people hate The Blaze. Some people love CRTV, they hate CRTV. They love Trump, they hate Trump. This is the nature of the conservative movement today. We're in a lot of factions, and we're not agreeing on a lot right now. Right. The point is, it's okay. It's okay for us to not agree, as long as we're respectful, as long as we elevate the discourse and we make sure that we're kind to one another. These are the conversations that need to happen. These are the conversations I've been desperate to have with you guys for the past year. It's because these discussions need to happen, and we're going to vehemently disagree. I think that it's evidenced in the fact that they're merging of these two entities, and no one really seems to be just thrilled about it. Everyone's just So I'm going to wait and see. This is a lot of the content of my show at this point. A lot of radio hosts try to make predictions, and sometimes I will occasionally, but I'm really about telling you as it is right now what is going on, what we can see and hear with our own eyes. And in terms of the merger between CRTV and The Blaze, I think that it's a wait and see type of situation, but I'm optimistic about it. I'm also, let's be frank here, I'm looking to build some sort of contributorship to The Blaze and CRTV. That's about the only entity that I think I would even want to work for. So, I'm okay with them. Obviously, I'm on CRTV every other week. So, I don't always agree with Mark Levin. I don't always agree. I mean, CRTV had Gavin McInnes on. I don't ever agree with him. There are a whole host of people that I have, policy disputes with, but I think it's good. I think this strengthens both of those entities, and it gives an entity an opportunity to compete against Fox News, and also the stranglehold that some of the big syndicators have in radio. So let's go to a couple more comments. Why don't we do a few comments, Mike, or if you want to pick them out, and then we'll end the broadcast. We're gonna 1 hour 19 minutes of nonstop talk. Really quickly before we go to comments, I need to thank my advertisers who are sticking with me while we try to find this new flagship. Again, very exciting news. And I know I'm going to forget someone, so I'm going to write them down as I do it. So the Ide family of dealerships, with me from the very beginning. If you are in the Rochester area, please go and purchase your next car from the Ides. At least give them a shot. They are supporters of this program, and again, they're holding on to their budgets while we figure out where we're going to go in 2019. PCM and Associates, that's Dom Polano. You can find any of these guys on Google. Just Google their names, or you can message me directly and I'll give you their information. Dom Polano of PCM and Associates, Hellendale Dermatology and Dr. Liz, Livingston County Pizza Company, and my friend Paul, who makes the best maple bacon donuts I've ever had in my entire life. Unfortunately, he only makes them in the fall. It's like a seasonal thing. I'm like, why can't you make What precludes you from making maple bacon donuts in December or in June? But apparently it's a fall thing. So Paul over at Livingston County Pizza. We also have Sleep City and Gino Marcello. If you're in the market for a mattress, please go see him this holiday season. Diane from Advantage Federal Credit Union. Also Jeff Schofield, Rochester's biggest realtor, sticking with me as well, at least up to this point. So I want to encourage you all, if you need a realtor, go and check him out. That's Jeff Schofield. He's with Remax Plus, also the Goddard School and the Finney School. And I know I'm going to forget someone. Who else do I have? Rochester Personal Defense and Dave Jenkins, also sticking with the program. So I am actively finding the new flagship for them so that we can get their advertising up and running again. But in the meantime, if you guys can call them, reach out to them, thank them, send them an email, or even better yet, patronize their businesses. That's the whole point of the advertising anyway. So I want to thank all of you who have donated. We're continuing to bring in subscriptions and donations, and this is so important, guys. It's helping us build that model of subscriber first, listener first, and this has been really exciting to watch. You guys are keeping me afloat as we're in this transition period, and I couldn't do it without you guys. So please, if you feel like it's something that you're comfortable doing and you'd like to support us and help us to keep going, just click on that little donate button right in the corner at theshannonjoy.com, and you can donate in any amount. So $1, $2, $100. We've gotten all sorts of different amounts, and every single donation is so appreciated. So let's end the broadcast, Mike Panessa, with a few. What, is someone mad at me? What did I do?
No, we just have.
Yeah.
There's questions here that could be a whole show unto themselves. So,
okay.
There's a can of worms here. Eddie List says, if we find one who defends the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and honors our founding principles, we can find a good bit of common ground.
Absolutely.
So there's quite a few comments about balancing. When Trump does something okay along conservative lines, we give him props. But conversely, when he goes astray, which is a lot, then he should be called to task on those as well. So there's a lot of people chiming in to that effect.
Yeah, the problem that I've had this past year is because I follow discernible policy outcome and facts as opposed to rhetoric. So I don't listen to what people say. I look at what they do. So Donald Trump is like this. Blah, 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 blah. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm saying this. I'm smacking the Russians. I'm smacking the Democrats. I'm saying this. I'm saying that. And Donald Trump says a lot of crap. But I don't even listen to what he says. I look at what's happening. So I read his executive orders. I read his memorandums. I try to read or as much of the legislation as I can, which is not much, but I rely on very good researchers, and I have people that I trust who do read the legislation, and I always verify that in certain areas. But because I do not consider rhetoric to be a viable determination of whether or not he's doing something good or bad, I only look at the policy. Unfortunately, there's not much he's done. This is why I can only say that he is the third term of President Barack Obama, because everything, and I mean, poor Steve Deace, the amount of mail that he gets when I'm on his program, and he's got 2 hours of me this week, so it should be quite interesting. But this is why I have to say, if I'm going to be honest to all of you, as someone who does not consider the rhetoric, only looks at the discernible policy outcome, that I would say essentially 98% of the initiatives and the policies that were put in place by President Trump, including really high profile things like transgenders in the military, right? Most people would think that Donald Trump had got rid of transgenders in the military. That's all being riled up in court still. I mean, this is everything that was happening during the Obama administration is still happening. And so essentially, and that's where people get really confused, because if you're listening to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, any of the big talkers, if you're watching Fox News or reading the Drudge Report or any of the online rags, then you think that Donald Trump defunded Planned Parenthood. Why? Because they're lying to you. They're taking a statement and saying Trump to defund Planned Parenthood and running it across headlines, and then people are like, oh, he defunded Planned Parenthood. When in reality, he's signed onto budgets giving them a total of $1.5 billion now over the past 3 budgets, contributing to hundreds of thousands of abortions. And so that's the difficulty of today's political culture. It's really it's not the people's fault. It's the mainstream news media, both right and left, that just lie about everything all the time. And I don't even think they know they're lying. That's the other awful component, is that most of your pundits don't really work very hard. They read, they have certain sources that they've always trusted forever, and they just read them, and then they don't think about it a whole lot. And we need better. A couple more comments?
This could be a really good question to end the show.
Okay.
David L. says, does he ship those maple bacon donuts?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sure you would if you paid the right amount. They're so good. Yeah, I mean, the thing is though, it's better when they're hot and they come out, and they're just so good. I know. Maple bacon donuts. Thank you, Paul, at Livingston County Pizza Company and gluten-free bakery. That's why they make the donuts. All right, you guys are the best. Please, please, please push this out. If you're watching right now, we're going to end the broadcast. For those of you who missed it, or you're just popping on now and you want to get the entire broadcast, go to theshannonjoy.com and subscribe. You can get this entire podcast. You can listen at your leisure, on demand, commercial free, but we're not running any commercials anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. But if you enjoyed what you saw here today, please consider donating. It's a little button up on the shannonjoy.com. There's a little donate button up in the corner, and please share this out, push it out, take this link, put it on social media, and help me begin to grow this online audience. We are working very hard to get the production value of the program up and running and up to par, but also we're working very hard on pushing this out to Facebook and Twitter via Periscope and Facebook Live. And so those 2 elements, when we can get them up and running, are going to be really important in really bumping up our views. So again, God bless all of you. Thank you so much for being with me today, and we'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. The Shannon Joy Show.